I'm going to remember to record. Is everyone feeling GameStop FOMO again? I'm gonna be talking to myself again tonight. Okay.
Hello, Dinzy.
Hi, that's better. I like a little bit more interactive, even just to say hello. Voices are nice. I know we see each other online all the time and typing, but nice to put some voices to some names.
Yep.
What's up, everybody?
Howdy. We'll give about 2 more minutes for everyone to get in and get settled. Nope, don't get the reference. I'm reading it over and over again. I'm like, still don't get it. Okay, so let's get started. It's 8:30. So recap of the last couple of weeks. So in the first week, we talked about setting goals for success, what success will look like for you individually, and then how to try to take those goals and make them something a little bit smaller so they're manageable and something that you can kind of set your sights on, that you actually know where you need to be in order to achieve your goals. And then last week we talked about position sizing and risk management, so that it is more of making sure that your goals and your risk line up together, and it's not just, you know, trying for a home run every so often and hoping that you make it, only to feel frustrated when you give it all back on the next trade or whatever it is. So now what we're going to talk about is making sure that we can measure our success in a way that when we come back to it in a week or a month or a year or whatever, we have a way to track our progress in a way that's measurable and a way that we can see exactly where our successes are and where our failures are, but also not in a way that's going to just, you know, be a dump on ourselves. So the idea is going to be that when you journal and when you plan your trades, same with risk management and same with everything else, you have to have the process of how it's going to work for you before you start to do it. Because just like everything else, when you go to do something, you can do it with intention or you can do it without intention. And when you come to a chart every day, let's say you go to look at a chart and you just stare at it for a while with no intention, you can come out of the experience having learned nothing, even though you spent your time doing it. So not all journaling is created equal. And even just like risk management and even like, you know, what your goals are is going to be different for everybody, and what your weaknesses and what your strengths are. Your journal is going to look slightly different when it's for you, because you're having to do it towards your success, not towards what other people want. So I've seen lots of different versions of how people journal. And a lot of the times what's happening is they're journaling in ways that really don't line up with ways that are going to achieve their goals. So I've seen everything from, absolutely no journaling at all, just like come into the day, don't have a plan, trade all day, walk away, not knowing how many trades you took, not knowing what you even did. And, by the end of the month, you can't really remember anything that you did. You just kind of remember that it's up or down and you're not sure how the month is finished. To people who journal 6 written, like typed out pages every single night after a trade day. And no matter which end of the spectrum we're on, you still saw people failing even wherever they were between those two extremes. And the reason for that is that it has to be journaling with intent. So when you set your goals, like you did in the first week, you set out what success looks like, right? And it might be a dollar amount, it might be how trading wants to fit into your life, it might be et cetera, whatever it is for you. But now the important part is to know how you can make small, manageable steps towards that success and what that looks like. And just like anything else, if you set the intention that you have to do a ton of work in order to do something right or well, what ends up happening is you just stop doing it altogether. So everybody has their aspect of charting that's fun. Now, for some people, that's in the charting itself. For some people, it's in the actual trading and the clicking buttons, and they don't really want to spend much time doing homework or doing any of that. And everybody has their thing, but obviously most of us can come in here and stare at the charts for 8 hours a day and never want to stop looking at them, and we can rake in all this content and all this other stuff with the learning, but then we don't want to necessarily spend the time to journal, to track, to plan. And at the same time, when you finish a day of trading, you finish a week of trading, or you're finished at work for the day and you're exhausted, the last thing you want to do is go over maybe every mistake you made or every good thing you did, or maybe you only want to journal on days where you had a great day because you get to brag about it to yourself. Or maybe you use journaling as a way to tear yourself apart on days that you had a really bad day. None of those ways are going to be effective in the long run because there's no consistency on it, right? So just trading on good days, just journaling on good days, just journaling on bad days is not going to set yourself up for consistency, because the idea is always consistency. If you always journal on only good days, you're not going to have an accurate representation of the mistakes you made. If you only journal on terrible days, you're not going to have an accurate representation of the positive trades that you made. So it's important to know, for yourself, like, I talked about how I don't really like oversold bounces all that much or whatever it is. It's important to know for yourself too, where your strengths and weaknesses are. And if you don't take the time to, at least to some extent, know where those are by doing those journals, then, sorry, I'm just going to mute a little bit here. Okay. Then you are not going to give an accurate representation of yourself. And psychologically, this is important because most people tend to overestimate their abilities. It's true in pretty much everything. We all think that we're a little better than we probably are. Obviously, there are some circumstances and in some things where we vastly underestimate our abilities, but for the most part, people are fairly unself-aware. And it's okay to be a little bit unself-aware, but it's not okay to continue to stay blind when it's hurting you, when you can choose to be honest with yourself and see. And again, not to point out every single flaw that you have over and over again, rather to say, okay, this is a strength and this is something that's not as strong, and I'm going to focus on my strengths and not worry about what other people's strengths are, because the only person you're playing against in this game is yourself, right? Everybody, you have enough going on in your own head that you don't need to be worried about what anybody else is doing in this game. So journaling. So journaling has two parts for me. It has the trade planning, and then it has the execution side. So we can make plans all day, and if we can't follow through on them, they're fairly meaningless, right? And then, you have the old adage, like, man plans and God laughs, right? Because how many times do we make a plan and then what we end up doing resembles absolutely nothing like what our plan initially was. So for me personally, and it will look a little bit different for everyone else, but it likely should be some version of this. When I'm looking back at my weekend, we started doing it in the chat where every Friday I'll start posting sort of, for everyone to grade themselves. And somebody finally asked, they're like, you don't mean money, right? I'm like, oh God, no. Definitely don't mean did you make money or did you not this week. I mean, how did you trade that's setting yourself up for meeting your eventual goals? And a lot of people will say, I had a plan and I completely didn't stick to it, or I had a plan and I stuck to it fairly well, B+, or whatever it is, right? So when you're starting those journals, it's all going to start with what you come in with as a plan. And it can be as specific as I'm buying X with a stop at Y and a target of ABC. Or it can be, I'm watching, this ticker and I'm watching the hourly chart for whatever bull break, and then I'm going to start walking up a stop, right? So it doesn't have to be, my plan doesn't have to look like your plan, but there does have to be an aspect of preparedness, because if you don't have a plan or you're not prepared for something, then you don't get to say that you would have been in this trade so well had you only done something. You didn't do something. You didn't plan the trade. You didn't take the action to be ready for it. And you don't get to come back. You don't get to come back afterwards and say, I'm so fantastic. I would have done this trade perfectly if only I had whatever. If you don't have that plan, you don't get to then go back and pretend you're better than you are. And you don't get to pretend you're worse than you are either, right? So intention matters, intention and the trade plan. So the first step you're going to want to take is you're going to want to take your goals. So the ones that you set out in the beginning, what trading wants to look like, what you want trading to look like in your life. Okay. And then you want to develop your set of habits that matches how you want it to look like in your life for setting your intentions for trading. So what that might look like, let's say if you're somebody who only wants to swing trade, you work a full-time job, you don't really have a lot of time, you want to swing trade and be part of the market, but you don't necessarily want to be watching all the time, right? So we talked with risk management, how you can enter bracket trades and all sorts of things like that. But that should also mean how you set up your time as far as which trades you're going to take, what homework you're going to do, and then how you're going to execute those trades when you're not able to watch, or if you only have, 5 minutes a day to check in on things, so that you're not looking back and saying, whoops, I should have whatever. So for you, your first object is to write down what your habits are going to be. So Dan posted like a year ago, his morning routine of what he does every morning. And if he's not on his morning routine, he kind of, might have to step back from the trading day or whatever it is. So your routine, and again, just like with working out, just like with anything else, it can't be so complicated that it's not replicable. It has to be replicable within your life. If you have 1 hour a week to look at charts, then you need to be able to have a plan that allows you to look at charts for 1 week, set your moves for the entire week, and that's it. If you are able to watch every single day, then you still have to set your plan for how you're going to trade every single day, not just, coming in and then trading whatever looks good on the day. And unless that's your plan, is just to, come in and play whatever the hot list is, try to eke them out. But normally that doesn't really work out so well for people in the long run. So your plan. So let's say if you're a swing trader, your weekly routine, you want to know where you're finding your tickers. That's going to be different for everyone. So, if you're swing trading, maybe you're using the swing report. Maybe you're only playing the names that are being highlighted on the swing call on Sundays. Maybe you're looking at the charts that I post usually, half a dozen to a dozen setups every weekend. Whatever it is, maybe you're watching news sources because you want to play certain SPACs, or you want to play, certain potential volatile tickers. Maybe you're watching somebody on Twitter who has good calls. Whatever it is, you're having the first thing you're doing is your way that you're going to narrow down the trades you're going to watch for the week. And then you're going to, beyond that, not worry too much about what else is happening in the markets. Maybe you'll want to, come into each day, especially if you're day trading, with those things. But the last thing you want to do is have half a dozen trades that you plan for and then start taking 10 trades that you never planned for. Because same thing, in the long run, the psychology of not taking, let's say every trade you had planned worked out and you took 10 other trades. Even if those 10 other trades worked out, you will still feel bad that you also missed the ones that you had planned. So it's important with your psychology and with your intention that you treat it that it matters, because it does, and it changes when you fail to stick to the plans that you had. You're constantly giving yourself a reason to get upset with yourself retroactively for things that you didn't do, right? It's just one more regret you have, or one more whatever, however you want to describe it. But for a lot of people, it's regret. And for a lot of people, it continues that cycle of, well, if I would have just, and that's a terrible place to be all the time, to always think that you're one step away from being the best version of yourself, but you can never get there. I can't imagine a worse place to be, that you constantly feel like you're one away. And for the most part, we're not one away. We're every second choosing a habit that can continue to take us where we are. We're never just one away. We're always a work in progress, and we're always working towards something that is greater than ourselves. The other reason is you want it to be fun. You want trading to be an enjoyment in your life. You want it to be a positive in your life. You don't want it to be something that every day you look back and think of all the stuff you didn't do and then feel miserable about yourself, because that's not going to make it a benefit in your life. That's just going to make it a draw on your energy. So the planning phase is important. So where you're going to find your tickers, all that stuff, how you're going to set up your trades, and again, it will look different for everyone. So some people are happy just to look at their a basic trade plan, and then they're kind of their profit loss for the week, and then call it a day. Some people really like to get into the nitty gritty to know exactly what type of trade plan works for them the best, so that what type of setups they have the highest probability with. They might want to know, which types that they should focus on, what time of the day that they trade the best, what sector they trade the best, what names always seem to get them, what name is your FOMO name, whatever it is, what pattern do you suck at, whatever it is, you might want to get into that nitty gritty. Again, that's going to go to your individual choices. So choose how much you need to know. For everybody, it's slightly different, but there is a level that you need to know some of that, right? Going into every day and then a month later having no clue how you got anywhere, whether good or bad, is probably not going to be very helpful, because if it's bad, you want to not replicate it. And if it's good, you want to replicate it, right? So that's going to be important. And then fitting that in with your life to make sure that you have the right setup for yourself and the right habits to make sure that, you know, you are on for that. And then the other reason that the journaling and the trade plan is important is because our psychology is a real bitch sometimes. So just, you know, random poll, but how many times have you seen the market dump and you either panic or you sell or you don't buy the dip? Okay, probably happened yesterday. Okay. And how many times 10 minutes later does the market bounce and you're like, oh, I was going to do this and I didn't do it? And I have to say, like, I royally messed up the bounce yesterday, like so bad. So yeah, today on Tesla, yesterday on Tesla. There we go. Okay, so it happens pretty much to everybody. GME didn't dump though. Okay, so GME took off, it didn't dump. It's not that we're traumatized, it's that we're fairly normal people. And I actually have this is funny. We're regular people. One of my trading mentors, he at one point actually changed the colors of his candles because red is, like, some people have associations with red. It's scarier, it means loss, it means dumping, it means whatever it is. And so he actually changed the colors of his candles on his charts just so that they didn't reflect red or green anymore and they became neutral. So it's not that you're traumatized by it, it's that it's a normal reaction. When things are dumping, nobody wants to buy, everybody's racing towards the exit. That's like the natural, you know, thing that happens in the markets. That's why we get dumps. It's because everybody panics and sells. So these are normal reactions and these are normal feelings to have of the market. So to recognize that, and then to know that you have to trade counter to what is the natural human reaction, right? Howdy. It's fine to do, but it takes practice. It's not trauma, it's practice. You need to practice buying when there's blood in the street. You need to practice going against, you know, every instinct sometimes in the markets. I won't say in your body, because some people can really get away from it and that's wonderful. But that's the exact thing that, you know, it takes time to develop the ability to do things that are not natural. If they're natural, then everybody would be doing it and everybody would be doing it well. So when I posted about Tesla yesterday, so here was the thing. Everybody knew to be looking for a bounce on Tesla, right? Dan was talking about it. Dan basically only covered Tesla live. I don't know, I wasn't listening, but I'm assuming he covered it fairly in depth. We knew that we were looking for a flush and bounce on Tesla. So what I said in chat beforehand was, don't just worry about the RSI getting oversold, worry about where there's levels, where there's some support, where there's some area where you expect that maybe it could bottom, maybe you could see some things happening. And then of course the speed of which it gets there, right? So we started trading on Tesla at like 665 pre-market, and we knew that there was I had a support at 658, 650, and then we knew that the low of pre-market was 650, so that if that gave out, you don't just want to be scaling into Tesla if that gives out, because you don't know where the bounce is going to come from. So you're looking at levels below. So I had some levels, maybe 637, 614. There wasn't a lot between there. And so to me, it meant, okay, in that range under 650, I'm going to be a bit more patient and wait for it to really flush. And so when we're looking at that, the part of having the plan is the part that helps you to deal with the fact that it's like against what your natural instincts would be. it's normal for your heart to start racing faster when this happens. And so then it's normal to start feeling the fear and the, you know, the excitement and all the different things that go along with that. And so having your plan written out in front of you for how you want to trade it is the thing that's going to keep you grounded, right? So for some people, it's watching the EMAs that keeps them grounded, whatever it is. You need to have that thing that will help you stay in the mindset of the trade and not stay in the fear feeling, right? So if you know that Tesla's going to bounce, so first of all, position sizing, that's going to be obviously.
That's Bladeson.
We got. So position sizing is going to be obviously one of the things that helps. And that's, we talked about how last week that can help a lot. Especially with looking at, you know, smaller term trend changes so that you have a stop or whatever. But the other thing is writing down the play so that you know in advance how you're going to react no matter what happens, and not that you're sitting there just frozen, right? If you even just saying it in your head doesn't have the same effect as writing it down. Writing it down, it's the reason we journal. Writing it down takes it out of your head, it puts it on paper, and it makes it actionable. Keeping it in your head, it's like a thought that you never say. It's a thing that it's held up here and it doesn't translate. Once it's out on paper, it's out in the world, your intention is out there, and it's much easier to stick to if it's there. So it's really important to get that written out. It's the same reason why anytime somebody in chat says, this is my entry on something, reading. There you go. Limit buys. Those are some, that's a heavy, that's a 10% down flush. You were fairly confident there. That's pretty good. See, to me, once it got below 650, I wanted to wait and buy it a little bit lower. I sort of bought a bit at like 658 and I stopped out on the 650 break, and then I went to buy it back at 620, and then I looked up at the clock and realized I was late, and instead of hitting buy, I ran out the door and then watched it bounce to $100. That was fun. Anyways, all good. So that's how I messed it up. So I had my plan, and I was sitting there watching it, and it just happened not as fast as I needed to. Such is life, right? I also did it with Zoom. I had the same, and I bought Zoom at 355, and then I had to leave. So I just set my stop at like 351 something, and it ticked it by 2 cents, and then ran $30. So I had some in a different account, so it was okay, but that was kind of, yeah, a lot of people will trade. 10 shares of Tesla is good enough for me. Doesn't matter if you plan for getting punched in the mouth. I mean, these are things that happen. That's what position sizing is. These are all things that come from fear. Everything that you're saying with the trauma, with everything, it's all from fear. And I get that it comes from losses, and I've taken losses. Everybody's taken losses. But if you're going to be scared, completely terrified to play in the market, then you're going to struggle, because it takes a little bit of balls to be in the market. I didn't get right back into Zoom. I would have if I wasn't driving. And I checked to make sure that the play is still valid. The only reason I set a stop on Zoom there was because I was leaving and I wasn't able to manage the position. So if it dropped another $10, $15, it would have been difficult for me to manage that. So otherwise I would have managed it differently had I been watching. So it's making sure that the trade fits your life. At that point, having to drive my kids to the dentist, it didn't fit my life to be playing an oversold bounce if it only lasted for 10 minutes and then dumped to lower lows. And then, I'm driving and I can't do anything because it's a trade on the 5-minute chart, right? Yeah, it comes with practice for sure. And it also comes with position sizing so that you can give yourself a slightly looser stop, especially if you have fees and that becomes an issue. It's really hard I found it really hard. So in Canada, we still have fees for trading, and that's frustrating to a lot of people. And I know in crypto you have that too. And taking a trade and then stopping out, so that let's say costs you $10, and then all of a sudden you have to get right back in. So now you're $20, and all of a sudden you have to make that much extra on your trade just to make it work out. That's really hard to sometimes get over that mentality, especially if you're playing with a smaller account. So in general, my approach with smaller accounts is that I have to look for the larger percent that I'm going to take, and I have to give a bit more wiggle on my stop so that I'm not getting stopped out. Because if I know that getting back in is going to cost me an extra, let's say you're trading with a small account, you're trading with, $1,000 on this trade. And so $10 is going to be 1% of that. So your stop, you can put your stop 1% lower, because that's literally the price of having to get back into the trade. And then you can try to help it play out. Yeah, off topic, we'll talk about it later. Okay, so whatever the thing is, when you write down your plan, it makes it a lot more manageable to play. So that's where we're going to start, with writing it down. And then it also gives you something to measure your success against. So we saw that somebody had their plan for Tesla was buying these levels, right? And then scaling in probability. They had a strength of how much they believed in the trade. They wrote it down, and then they knew where they were going to get out, right? So that idea of writing it down gives you something to measure on how well you did, versus something just in your head. So now he can look at that. Canada has so many weird things. Okay, so knowing that, you can then look back at your trade and say, okay, my plan was to make these 4 scales in, and then my plan was to sell into the daily lower high, or whatever it was, right? So you can look back at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and say, okay, I had this plan, I scaled in this many trades, I would check, I did that, check, I did that, I took profit, halfway to make the trade a little bit more comfortable, check, and target reached, target didn't quite reach, I had my secondary backup exit plan, whatever it was. So when you do that, you not only get out on paper so that you can manage when things are happening that your body feels uncomfortable with, but it also means that you can measure your success really well. And if you continue to write that down and then see that you continue to stick to that, it makes it easier and easier and easier to do it the next time. If you never write it down, you're always going to have these thoughts swirling in your head of what you could have done, how you could have done it differently, and you'll start making up stories that don't match reality. And you'll either, like we talked about before, you'll either overestimate your abilities, or you'll severely underestimate your abilities, because we'll tend to go into that thing of what we almost could have done, or we'll tend to just constantly knock on all the bad things we did. So writing it down is going to give you a way better gauge of where you're going to be at. Okay, how many times have you missed an entry only to then FOMO into the trade? There we go, got one. Anyone else in the past? Good. I can't tell you how many times I have posted a trade setup, and then 20% later, and I'm not saying I get trades right, I get trades wrong all the time. Okay, I'm just saying this is an example. This is something that I have noticed. I'll post a trade setup, and when I post it, people don't believe it. And then 20% later, they're like, where can I get in for an entry? So it's not even just about, or I'll talk to people and they'll tell me they're in this name. I'll be like, okay, what's your entry? And here I am thinking that their entry is somewhere here and their entry is somewhere here. And I'm like, oh, okay, how are we managing this trade right now? Because all of a sudden that looks a lot different as far as, the risk that you're willing to put on to get to some of those targets. I remember it very specifically with SPCE with space. And I posted the setup a little bit early. I was fairly early on the trade, which I'm glad about. Sometimes that happens. I get lucky. But I just remember that I posted about the trade at about $21. And in the next 2 days, it went up like 10, 15%. Like it happened really fast. I was really lucky. I love when trades happen so fast. It makes trading so much fun. But all of a sudden we're trading at like 27. And then I get all these people like, when can I get in? When can I get in? And we haven't really set a higher low. We haven't really done anything. And so it's this idea that we had no plan to get in, or we didn't even want to get in when it was lower. And now that it's finally running, it's like we have to wait to actually see it to believe that it can even happen. And how many times have you seen things happen in the market and you say to yourself, okay, next time that happens, I'm going to be in on it. And then it happens again and you're not in on it. Nobody ever does that. So again, you're going back to the feeling of, you're feeling that you have to see it to believe it. And you are constantly fighting against human psychology. Everybody wants to be in. There was a study. It was on one of these like kids shows where they study psychology, and they basically had a few of them. And one of them was showing about social media, how what happens with social media is that if somebody posts a picture and it has 5 likes, maybe you may or may not decide that you like it. But if somebody posts a picture and you already see that it has 1,000 likes, you are like 60 or 80% more likely to also like it, right? So we have this collective mentality where we like things that other people like. And when we look at the trades and we were watching for the setups, until we see that other people also want it, we don't really want it. And that's another thing that we have to get our heads around, because obviously we want momentum on our side, right? That's what trend changes are for. But it also means that that's going to mean that we're constantly increasing our risk, right? Yeah. So people will make these call outs and they look ridiculous, and you know, it happens, and people don't want to buy it until it's 10, 20% higher because they feel like nobody else wanted it. So why did they? And it's different than oversold bounces. That's more like with breakouts, but it happens. So how many times do you feel like the market has surprised you in a way that you feel like it's never really going to surprise you again, and then you're surprised by it 2 days later? So I'm pretty sure that one of our members had to eat a raw potato yesterday just because he was so surprised by what he saw. And I'm pretty sure that if you've traded in the MJ space, you've seen everything. Okay, so this idea that we pretend like we've seen it all, and then still, he ate the potato already. So the idea that we can pretend like we've seen it all and then at the same time be shocked every single day means that writing it out is important. So you need to, these are things that you're needing to fight against. So the reason and the intention of journaling, and I'm getting to a point here with all these how many times. When you journal, you are having a plan for when you're shocked by the market, because it will definitely shock you again. When you journal, you're having a plan for when the market is causing visceral physical reactions, and you want to be able to participate regardless of your own reactions. And your journaling, what was the other thing that we did? You're journaling to make sure that when you come back to it, you're being realistic about your own abilities. Okay. So you're going to pick your measure of success. You're going to pick how trading fits in with your style. And you're going to create a plan for your journal. Now, again, the vastness of what we can journal is too much. We can journal how we felt about things, how we reacted, you know, you can do anything you want. Some people will journal if they drank enough water in the day. Some people said that they trade 25% better if they don't drink coffee. Some people trade better if they drink 10 cups of coffee, like Jason. I don't think he trades better on it. You know, some people only trade well if they get their morning routine out of the way. Some people, more coffee the better. I don't know, I could IV coffee, like, but that's probably not a good thing. So all of these things are going to come into your own journal, and then you have to pare it down like a lot, because there's so many things that you can do. And if I was reading Atomic Habits not that long ago, and it sort of talked about, like, if you can make each of these 1% things better, then you can make a 50% difference in your performance, right? So you want to get on all those things, but the important thing is not to try to do them all at the exact same time that it becomes so overwhelming that you can't actually stick to any of it, okay? So your homework and your process that you need to continue with. So you've now looked at your accounts, you've looked at your risk, you've looked at your success, and you've looked at your goals. And now you're paring it down to very specifically. So step one is going to be how you choose your trades, what news you want to pay attention to. Personally, I pay attention to almost no news unless it's, you know, Mr. F posting a trade lockup trade, because, you know, those are pretty good. So some people, you know, there's some trades that you want to get in on, but for news related purposes. But other than that, I pretty much ignore news. Doesn't bother me at all. Yes, his silver plate. I was joking about BA yesterday. I was watching the BA chart, and I had posted a trade setup on BA in February from 195, and the target was 224, and all of those are posted. So if I comment on it, it's only because I posted it previously. Some of them are wrong, and that's fine. But I was watching BA yesterday, and I looked at it and I said, okay, news, 3 plane crashes, and it can't close below my 208 or area level. And that looked, to me, trade plan was just like, that's a buy, because it hadn't hit my target yet. So I was like, okay, we're going to buy that because it didn't close below the level. 3 plane crashes, can't get much better than that. So sometimes, you know, the trade plans fall into your lap. Sometimes you actively have to seek them out. Whatever it is, you have your setup for it. So figuring out your process of how you're going to get your trade plans and how you're going to make that easy to get. It's too complicated if you're looking at too many things. And if you're not good at finding trade setups, then take other people's. And that doesn't mean that you should blindly copy people's trades. It just means that if you have people, engine issue, wasn't there like parts of a plane in somebody's lawn or something? There was one that was like parts of a plane that broke off. It was like all weekend, all I heard was BA news. Well, parts falling from the sky. I mean, if parts are falling from the sky and we don't close below 208, like that's bullish to me. So if you're not good at finding trade setups, steal somebody else's. That's literally what we're here for. If you don't know what to focus on what somebody else is focusing on. There's always going to be smarter people in the room, and you don't feel like you have to contribute so much that you have to find your own setups if you're not good at it. Just steal other people's. That's the best way to do it. So take somebody else's setup, find whatever it is that you want to do to get your setups, set out your plans for the week. And then when you focus on those and when you set out your trades for how it works with your lifestyle, again, that doesn't mean taking somebody else's exact trade if it doesn't fit with your style. It means, taking the trades that work with your style and then seeing if you can understand the TA behind it and going forward with it, right? But you don't have to reinvent any wheel here. You really don't. Okay. So then as far as marking your success, it could be as complicated as you want, and it can be as simple. So you're going to want to go in and monitor what works for you and what doesn't work for you, but you're going to want to do it in pieces. So the first thing to do is make sure that you're not jumping around from style to styles to style, like changing indicators every 3 days or trying to add a million indicators or whatever it is. You have to give any system time to work itself out and see that if it works, because there'll be, sometimes you'll have 10 trades that go off the rails and don't really work out. And then your next 30 work out. And so if it's a really bad system, you'll get consistent losses. But if it's a good system, then you'll get sort of like 50-50 or 60-40, whatever it is. And if it's a really amazing system, maybe you're hitting a little bit higher percentage. But the idea is that there's literally no perfect system. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, and you want to make sure that you're maximizing your potential, not trying to be, you don't really have to be unique in this space. You just have to ride the wave, right? Okay. And then your measures of success are going to be process-based. So what this means is that if you always measure your success as far as dollars go, then what you're going to run into trouble when you take a series of losses, and you'll start to, question yourself, question everything, and you won't know how to get yourself out of that rut because you're too focused on the money. Whereas when you focus on the process, every single time you can see exactly what in the process was or was not working. So your measures of success at the end of every day has to be, how did I stick to my process? Did my process work? So yeah, for a lot of people, that means turning off their profit loss. For a lot of people, that means, paring down position size and significantly until they can stick to their plans. Whatever you have to do to make sure that your process can run its course and that you can give yourself a good grade. And it could be measurable in that you take 5 trades, you stuck to your exact trade plan on 5 of the 5 trades, you get a 5 out of 5. You stuck to your plan 4 out of the trades, you get a 4 out of 5. And your goal is to improve that process every single week, and then find the things that helps you improve the process over time by looking at smaller things. If you're drinking enough water, if you're sleeping well, if you're not sleeping well, whatever it is, right? And all of those things will come into play, but it has to be a process-based thing, and it has to be one with the intention that it's going to take time to sort itself out. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Okay, so I'll wrap it up, and then you have your homework now to add on to everything that we did last week and then everything that we did the week before. So figure out where you're getting your trades from, how you're going to journal your trades, what your process is going to be, and then grading your process, not making it too difficult at the end of it. So you're going to want to come out of it, this week, tonight, wherever, with a fairly actionable journal that measures your thing. Okay, so you want to come up with, no, you shouldn't have any. Oh, okay. I talk too fast. I know. This is, my mom told me, she was listening to me live the other day, and she's like, I definitely don't have to listen to you on 1.5 speed. So, okay. So your homework is to make sure that you have your routine for where your trades are going to come from. As simple as whatever Dan's playing on in the day, to as complicated as I'm going to code my own scanner for my own criteria and pair it, whatever, you know what I mean? I don't even know how that works. And then narrow it down to what you want to focus on in the week so that you can keep your focus. And then set up your success measure so that you're measuring your process based on how well you stuck to what you intended to do. And if you intend to take day trades that you don't necessarily plan out, but they're somewhere in the chat, then you can set in your journal, like, okay, I'm going to set aside a few trades. Given how many setups you plan out, how recently have you had no trade? I've had a few of those lately. So not only like no trade kinds of days, but I was doing my trade setups on Sunday this week. And I noticed that when I did it like 3 weeks ago, I had like 15 to 18 trade plans. And then when I was going through this week, I was like, okay, maybe 1, maybe 2. Like I kind of eked out 3 that could go. And I felt like I had very little conviction on any of them. And that was sort of a sign to me that the market might be entirely complicated this week. And I was going to have to wait a little bit to see what it gave me, because we had a whole bunch of trades that were like too overextended. And then a whole bunch of trades that had already kind of come down, but they weren't necessarily ready to do more. And I really did feel like there was just not as much that I liked at all. A few of them ended up working out fairly well. From this week, the energy sector and banks worked out really well. And then obviously we had the oversold bounces. So those kind of worked out as far as that goes. But definitely I'll just be like, okay, you know what, this is a week to play maybe a sector instead of like individual hype names, or this is the week to kind of day trade on the hourly chart and not worry about, trying to take too many breakout trades or whatever. It happens often. Like you look at it and then you kind of have to get a feel of, if I'm looking through charts, maybe I have like, I'm making up numbers, but maybe I have 200 to 300 tickers. Okay. I don't think I have that many, but it's possible. If I look through 200 to 300 and I only feel like I have, 5 or 6 that jump out at me, then that to me means that the markets might do something a little bit more awkward this week. And maybe I have to scale back or wait for something else that maybe I'm not tracking. Whereas if I'm looking at that and I all of a sudden see like 30 or 40 trades, then I know that, maybe that means that it's, fairly decent week and there's a lot of good setups. And that means that probably there's going to be a lot of people watching a lot of good setups, which means money and liquidity in the markets, right? So it's all about getting that, that feel for it. Okay. Will I feel overwhelmed? Yes. Sometimes I literally will look at my account, and if it has too many tickers open, I'll start just like quickly taking some off because I just don't like the idea of it. I don't like too many open, especially if I feel that I'm too overexposed and that I can't manage if the markets would all go at the same time. And I'll all of a sudden look and be like, wait a second, if I have this many trades open and the markets turn, am I prepared? Then I'll start paring them down. But it would usually take me to be closer to like 15 to 20 trades open for me to feel that way. So everyone has their level of comfort. Dan doesn't like being in more than like 2 or 3. Anything else? Okay, homework slowly. So 2 questions. Yes. Average amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. $24. I probably have about 24 open right now, which is probably a bit much, but is what it is. Maybe it's only 20. Again, it doesn't matter how many I do. Well, because 9 of them are swing trades in a separate account that I don't look at every day. No. Yeah, 9 of them are swing trades. There was 11. I had to stop out of a couple because it was too many. Our swing trades in an account I don't watch every day, and those can just have stops and I don't have to pay as much attention. And then a few of them are like smaller option lotto plays that I kind of like give a bit more leeway. And then a few of them will be day trades and then a few swing trades. I trade kind of in 4 accounts in a way, but I find that because I do that, I can have like 4 or 5 in each account and it doesn't feel overwhelming. Whereas if you like look at it all at once and it's like this list a mile long, then I find that that's really not conducive. So I don't like that so much. I can count out because what do my journals look like? I'll write to myself. Usually I'll set out my trades for the week. I write them all in swing trades so that they're all set out there. And then I'll pick the top ones that I like and I'll write them out. So let's say like I'll have 1 week that I'll basically like look at it and be like, okay, this is what I want. These are the ones that I have. And then go from there. I'm working on setting up a like a proper journal so that it's easier to track. And some people will do them online. I write it down. Some people like the software ones. I personally think I've always been the type of person who writing something down is better for me than typing it. So I choose to write it down because I find that is somehow more active than typing it. So that works for me. And other people like TraderView, and it has like a lot of features. So many swings. Yeah, so I base each trade on, I don't really work at, I don't really like, I joked about this the other day. I'm like somewhere between this and a week maker and a 2-week maker. I don't really have an exact day maker or week maker. I have an amount that yeah, I think so too. So I have an amount that I'm willing to risk on a trade and then the reward that I feel makes sense with it. And then with a swing trade, remember we talked about last week that we have our risk for each swing trade depending on time in the market. So that matters more. So a day trade, it's not, I don't care so much about how much the trade makes. I care that the risk reward for the trade is correct. And then I care about the amount that I'm willing to lose on the trade. And if the risk reward is correct, then I'll make a decent amount on the trade for what I'm willing to put into it. So I don't care so much about day makers or week makers or anything like that. I care that I'm sticking to my process of risking an appropriate amount, that if my risk reward is on par, I will make an appropriate amount for that trade. So I kind of have moved away from the idea of day makers and week makers. Yeah. Anything else? Good. I'm sweating. I'm like, I get so nervous. I feel like under the spotlight. Okay, so you have your homework for this week. Next week, is it good to stop trading if you make your daily target? I don't really think about it like that either. If you're feeling like you're having a terrible day, yes, I'll take out a stock if it's not doing anything. Because that's money that could be in a better setup. Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, stop trading if you make your daily target is one thing. If you're trading fine, then there's not a problem. If you're trading poorly, then you should stop. I don't feel like if you're on a roll and you're trading really well and you're still only trading good setups, then there's not really a reason to stop unless you find that you tend to make your profit first thing in the morning and then give back the entire afternoon, then you really don't want to continue to trade once you've made it. But if you trade in the zone and you're good and you're trading, sticking to your plan on every trade, to me, the stopping has to come from psychological stuff like that versus you've just made your money for the day. Because in general, like if you're having a good streak, you want to maximize that because there's going to be times that turns. And so you want to give yourself a little bit of cushion for that. So I don't feel like there's a reason to stop unless psychologically you've done something to need to stop. Yeah. And again, make sure the reason I like process-based trades, or even just like that letter or number system, is you really don't want to spend like 30 minutes of your time at the end of each day kicking yourself for every single thing that you did wrong. That's not actually beneficial. So that's why I like the idea of like, kind of, did I stick to my plan? Yes, 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 done. I don't think this idea of, writing out extensively and dwelling for, 45 minutes an hour on everything you did wrong in your life is going to help you get better, right? Your journal has to have intention. That's sort of the key thing that I started with and that I want to end with, is that intention, intention, intention. You have to intend to be in a trade. You have to intend to be a better trader. And you have to intend to make yourself better, not to crap on yourself. And if you don't stick to all these things, then you still have to intend to be better. So no matter what you do, it has to be intention. Yeah, you can cut things immediately. Again, it has to go with your level of invalidation. In general, like where my max stop level is, like let's say, unless it's moved under your stop, in which case you should definitely be out. Like either my stop loss hits or it doesn't hit. And usually my stop loss is where I consider the trade to be invalidated for that style. So it has to be about validation. If your trade is still valid, yeah, maybe somebody wants to do a walkthrough trading view and post that so that people can do. Yeah. Lots of good stuff even in the chat tonight. Good tips and tricks. Okay, so next week we are going to, with the market 2 days ago, how did I not stop out? A couple things I did stop out, and then a couple things I bought more. So when stuff like that happens, the stuff that I know can fall like 30% in a blink of an eye, if the markets continue to be weak, I will stop out of, because position sizing wise and just how far down I know things can go. Like if we looked at like Tilray last, 2 weeks ago and stuff like that, those names, if I know that they're getting crushed, I'll stop out of them right away. So there was a few names that I just knew that they could drop another $10. So I stopped out of those very quickly. And then other names, when I was watching the levels, those are the ones I was looking to kind of buy more of. So comes with experience, and you have to have an invalidation level for your trades. That's what the plan is for. Okay, next week. I want to do a little bit about red flags in trading. So I want to talk a little bit more about, we've talked about all the ways that we want to set ourselves up for success. And so I do want to talk a little bit more next week about the ways that we sabotage ourselves and set ourselves up for failure. So if anybody wants to give specific kind of circumstances or questions or things that they want to do, that they want to privately message me, and it'll be completely confidential, obviously, but I'll share some of the scenarios so that other people can learn from them. That would be cool. If not, I have, a bunch that I can run through a little bit more generic or from previous experience. And I want to go through some red flags. I want to go through some of the psychological ways that we can kind of mess with ourselves, and some of the ways that people have gotten out of it, and then some of the ways that people haven't and really need to focus on getting help and getting out of it, and then some of the red flags in terms of trading careers and being in the markets at all. So, we've talked about ways to set up for success, but if you're not aware of sort of where there's that line between where you can still make it and where you're really struggling and potentially, either you have a gambling addiction or you have, a problem. So we're going to go a little bit more into that. It's not going to be any medical advice. Obviously, it never is, but just to be aware of some of the traps that our minds can sometimes keep us in, so that we can take an active look at that, because you need to kind of see both sides of every coin, right? We want to set ourselves up for the best possible success, and sometimes that means taking a look at the shitty side. All right. Good night. I will see you all live tomorrow morning.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye, guys. I feel like I should let everyone leave and then be the last face on the screen left.